Welcome, everybody, to the Captain Spot. I'm your host, Justin Freeman. 6 foot 1 inches, 275 pounds, fantasy knowledge. Guys, this is a unusual location here today. We are not in the studio. Instead, we are on family vacation here in the mountains of North Carolina. As you see, we got a little log cabin situation here behind us, but that's not going to stop us from talking a little Monday night showdown where it is Vikings at Bears, game in Chicago. Vikings favored on the road by 3 points. The game's got a 42.5 point total. This looks like it could be one of those sloppy, ugly NFC North divisional battle type games. We're getting later and later into the season. Could be seeing a lot of the running backs, especially from the Minnesota side, where we anticipate Dalvin Cook's going to be a huge part of this game. And then obviously on the other side of the football, a really key piece of injury news regarding the availability of David Montgomery. David Montgomery is out this week. We will not be seeing David Montgomery, so leaving a large gaping hole at the running back position for the Bears. You could argue there's been a large gaping hole at the running back position for the Bears all year long. However, with no official David Montgomery, there's going to be some sort of committee approach that's going to form in his wake. So without Montgomery, we're going to see some committee of Ryan Nall, Cordarrelle Patterson, and Lamar Miller being activated from the practice squad. So Lamar Miller, a little bit of a blast from the past as far as name recognition goes. So we know that he's got a lot of NFL snaps under his belt. Ryan Nall was actually the direct beneficiary of Montgomery going out in the fourth quarter of last game. He's the one that came in, got a handful of targets following the departure of David Montgomery. However, it's been Cordarrelle Patterson that's been the direct backup all year long for David Montgomery. So it's interesting. I could see this game playing out several different ways. I could see Lamar Miller just being handed this sort of like heavy ground pound type of approach there for the Chicago offense. The guy who's just going to like beat it up between the tackles and be the goal line guy. However, maybe they just follow the depth chart and slide Cordarrelle Patterson right on into a more featured back role. Use Ryan Nall on some passing downs. It sounds weird to think about taking Cordarrelle Patterson off the field on passing downs, but could that be what the Bears do? Here in this game without David Montgomery here before a bye week, can they? How would they decide to approach that? On the other side of the football, Irv Smith will be out for the Vikings. That's going to open up some opportunities for targets in that offense. Obviously, Kyle Rudolph kind of goes back to being the sort of alpha tight end, if you could call him that, in this offense. But it's mostly going to be an offense that flows through Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. But, being able to give that extra 3 to 4% target market share to Kyle Rudolph makes him viable, certainly on this slate. So we'll be considering him for sure. Tyler Conklin would be the backup tight end most likely to come in and be a direct beneficiary. But I think we want to take advantage of the really slim target tree there for the Vikings. Let's hop into the pricing this week, where obviously it's Dalvin Cook who leads the way, and deservedly so. Dalvin Cook's going to have to be a very core feature part of our builds this week at $13,600. We're going to want to make sure we have that. And just sort of taking an early look at my simulations for the week, we kind of like the passing side over on Chicago and the running side over in Minnesota. I think that's the most likely way this game plays out. Chicago will probably have to throw the ball a little bit more than they feel comfortable doing. Minnesota on the other side, probably going to be the team most likely to dictate pace. And if they do that, it's going to be a big game for Dalvin Cook. So I think Dalvin Cook certainly worth the price at $13,600. Allen Robinson at $10,800, second highest price guy. I don't know that we want to necessarily make Allen Robinson a really key featured part of our offense or lineup this week. I think you could certainly follow Allen Robinson's train of thought in terms of making him paired with Nick Foles and thinking, if the Bears are playing catch up, then Allen Robinson could be a part of that. However, I think there are cheaper pieces of the Bears offense that are worth taking advantage of instead of Robinson this week. And some of those guys include Darnell Mooney and Anthony Miller, a couple guys whose roles have been growing as Allen Robinson's have been shrinking over the last couple weeks. Darnell Mooney will cost you $6,600 this week. I think he's certainly viable, and I think he's definitely the number 2 receiver, followed by Anthony Miller at $4,800 as the number 3. I think I'd rather build with that so that I can make sure I can get Foles and Dalvin Cook into my lineup than do it any other type of way. Thinking about the Minnesota passing offense, Kirk Cousins, a guy I'm perfectly fine fading in this game. I don't think his number will be called upon a lot. I think there's a way that we can actually, fade him strategically in this game despite being a favorite. I think I would rather play some of his, pass-catching weapons. I'd rather play Adam Thielen than Cousins in this matchup. I'd rather play even Justin Jefferson straight up as a one-off than Kirk Cousins in this matchup. So I think it's a game we want to make sure we're focusing on the Foles passing-catching side. If we talk about the tight end position for Chicago, obviously Jimmy Graham's going to come to mind. He has been a target beast. He's been a red zone beast as well. I've been pleasantly surprised by what we've seen from Jimmy Graham. He's found the end zone several times so far this year. Could that keep up against Minnesota? Seems like it's a good spot to, and I think you can justify paying him off at his price point, $7,200, as opposed to Allen Robinson's $10,800. So I think 2 key guys that I may want to fade this week might be Allen Robinson and Kirk Cousins. Try to focus on sort of the other options in each of those offenses. But let's talk a little bit more about the Chicago running back position, because I do think that this is going to be a key piece for us to figure out what do we expect from Cordarrelle Patterson in this matchup. Could he slide right into the feature back job? I don't think it's likely. I think if I had to pick a guy who actually could get 20 carries in this offense, the most likely player for that to be is Lamar Miller, the guy called up off the practice squad. And, he's a guy who's got a lot of reps, as we mentioned. He's only $200 in this game. You could definitely justify playing Lamar Miller and hope that he's the guy. Then again, Lamar Miller may not get a snap. So there's a lot of ambiguity here, which means there's a lot of opportunity for us to make money here in Showdown, taking advantage of situations where players are uncertain. But I think overall, I don't want to outthink it too much. I think Cordarrelle Patterson's in a really good spot to probably double or triple his snap rate throughout the year. If you told me I could get 35% of the team's carries go to Cordarrelle Patterson, as well as 10% of the team's targets, then yeah, I think Patterson is the guy I'm most interested in. So obviously the defenses and kickers are going to be interesting, especially as we get later and later in the year. Want to make sure we check the weather for the kickers to make sure that they are continue to be viable. But I think overall, you can certainly consider defenses and kickers, on both sides of this game. Most likely on the Minnesota side, but there's so much good sack equity there against Cousins on the Chicago side as well. Let's talk about our captain spot allocations this week, where surprisingly it's Cordarrelle Patterson who leads the way as my favorite captain of the week, and that's sort of a stand on how I think this backfield shakes out. I like him just barely over Dalvin Cook. You see that those guys, Patterson, Cook, Foles, are sort of all right there together. Allen Robinson even grades out well if you want to attack it that way. But overall, you'll see just how far down Kirk Cousins is. It's sort of my favorite fade of the week. I just think it's going to be such a run-heavy attack there for the Vikings that we can get away from Cousins. So, yeah, Patterson unlocks a lot of opportunities for you in this game. I think that's worth considering as a really strong asset, given his price in the captain spot. Now, all of a sudden, you can afford all the really key pieces of each team's offense. And then as we look at the flex appearances, once again, look how low Kirk Cousins is. Nick Foles and Dalvin Cook, Cordarrelle Patterson, Anthony Miller, and Allen Robinson. So there you see Anthony Miller grading out above Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney right there together. So Allen Robinson, not a full fade as much as I want to do with Kirk Cousins, but doesn't grade out as well as we typically see alpha wide receivers. I just think the target share is slipping there for a guy like Allen Robinson. So overall, we've got all the information we need. I'm going to go back to my family and enjoy this vacation. We're heading on the road. I am going to be in the car with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old for about 6 hours heading on home today. So pray for me. Pray for your Showdown lineups, and we'll see you guys here soon. Later.